The scalpel trembled in her hand. Corporal Sloane Beckett knelt beside a makeshift surgical table, her fingers slick with blood that was not her own. The patient before her was dying, 30 seconds, maybe less. His chest rose and fell in shallow gasps, each breath more desperate than the last. She could save him. Years of training had prepared her for exactly this moment. 1 incision, 2 clamps, control the bleed, keep him breathing until the helicopters arrived. She could save him. But the question burning through her mind was not whether she could, it was whether she should. The man's eyes found hers through the haze of shock and pain. Recognition flickered there. He knew who she was. She knew who he was. And between them lay 23 bodies that would never breathe again. Her father's voice echoed from somewhere deep in memory. The best medicine is getting there first, even when it is dangerous, even when every instinct screams to stay safe. A medic's duty is sacred. Save everyone, even the ones who do not deserve it. But what if everyone included the man who had murdered your family? The scalpel shook harder. Images flooded her vision. Bodies stacked like firewood, blood pooling in desert sand, the radio crackling with unanswered pleas for help. 23 soldiers who had trusted their commander to bring them home. 23 families who would never be whole again. And her, buried beneath the weight of their corpses, playing dead for 14 hours while insurgents walked over the pile searching for survivors to execute. Sloane Beckett had been the only one they missed. The patient's breathing hitched, 10 seconds now, maybe less. Her hand moved toward the surgical kit. Then everything went black. 36 hours earlier. The sun rose over West Texas like a hammer striking an anvil, turning the highway into a river of shimmering heat. At 0847 hours, Corporal Sloane Beckett sat behind the wheel of an M997 HMWV ambulance, fourth in a convoy of 7 vehicles stretched along State Highway 54 between Fort Bliss and Nowhere. The armored medical vehicle hummed beneath her, engine steady, all systems green. Everything worked perfectly, which meant she had nothing to do but watch the road disappear beneath her tires and think about all the reasons she should not be here. She was 24 years old, 5'6", brown chestnut hair pulled into a regulation bun tight enough to give her a headache by noon, brown eyes that had seen too much and now spent most of their time staring at asphalt. 3 years in the Army had taught her to treat gunshot wounds under fire, perform emergency surgery with whatever tools she could find, and keep soldiers breathing long enough to reach a hospital. But for the past 9 months, she had done none of those things. Instead, she drove. The convoy rolled through empty desert, a standard formation for moving classified cargo through disputed territory. 3 supply trucks ahead, 2 behind, with Humvees mounting 50 caliber machine guns guarding front and rear. The route was considered low risk. Minimal hostile activity in this sector. Standard procedure. Nothing to worry about. Sloane gripped the steering wheel tighter and tried to believe it. Master Sergeant Dale Voss sat in the passenger seat, a weathered man of 45 with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He had been watching her for the past hour with the kind of attention that made her skin itch. Finally, he spoke. "You have been driving convoys for 9 months, Beckett." "Yes, Sergeant." "When are you going back to combat medicine?" Sloane kept her eyes on the road. "Convoy work suits me fine." "Does it?" Not a question. Voss shifted in his seat, still watching her. "You are wasting your training. Command says you are one of the best combat medics they have seen in a decade. Field hospitals are begging for experienced personnel, yet here you are hauling supplies through empty desert. Someone has to do it. Not someone with your skill set." Sloane said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Voss let it sit for another mile before he spoke again. I read your file. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Interesting reading, Voss continued. Top scores in medical training, commendations for performance under fire. Then 9 months ago, you requested transfer to convoy operations, rear echelon duty, as far from combat as you could get without leaving the service entirely. I needed a change. From what? Sloane did not answer. The radio crackled. A young voice cut through the static, bright and eager. Beckett, this is Quan. Radio check. Sloane keyed her mic. Lima Charlie, Quan, you good back there? All green, Sergeant Piper Quan replied from the vehicle behind them. 28 years old, junior medic, optimistic in the way only people who had never seen real combat could be. Hey, Beckett, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Have you ever treated actual gunshot wounds, like in combat, not training? Sloane felt Voss's gaze intensify. She kept her voice level, once or twice. What was it like? Messy. But you kept them alive, right? That is what Voss says. He says you are legendary. Legendary. The word tasted like ash. Sloane glanced at Voss, who raised an eyebrow as if to say, well, you are. Just do your job when the time comes, Sloane said into the radio. Hope you never have to find out. She released the mic before Quan could ask more questions. Voss waited exactly 30 seconds before speaking again. You are running from something. I am doing my job. Your job is saving lives in the field, not this. This is still the field, Sergeant. Is it? The statement hung in the air. Sloane focused on the road ahead, on the heat shimmer rising from black asphalt on anything except the weight of Voss's scrutiny. The convoy passed a highway sign. San Angelo, 40 miles, her hometown. She had not been back since the funeral. The memory hit her like a fist. 6 months ago. September rain drumming on the cemetery canopy. Her father's casket draped in an American flag, even though he had never served. Thomas Beckett had been a firefighter and paramedic for 30 years, and the department had given him full honors. Sloane stood in her dress uniform, numb and silent, while 300 people filed past to offer condolences she could not hear through the ringing in her ears. Her Aunt Margaret had gripped her hand, voice breaking. He was so proud when you survived, but losing your whole team, I think it broke something inside him. Sloane had not cried, could not cry. She just stood there in the rain, thinking about how her survival had killed her father as surely as a bullet through the heart. Thomas Beckett had died of cardiac arrest. Official cause, acute myocardial infarction. The truth was written in the lines of his face during their last conversation, in the way his hands shook when she told him what had happened at Outpost 17, in the way he looked at her like she was a ghost. Because that was what she was. A ghost who had crawled out from under a pile of corpses while 23 soldiers who deserved to live had bled out in the sand. Beckett. She blinked. The convoy was still moving. The road was still straight. Voss was still watching her. Sorry. You gripped the wheel so hard your knuckles went white. You were somewhere else just now. Sloane relaxed her hands, forced her breathing to steady. I am fine. Are you? She did not answer, did not know how to answer. The convoy rolled on through the heat. At 0900 hours they reached a fuel stop. A small checkpoint station squatted beside the highway, nothing more than concrete walls, a fuel pump, and a building that served as restroom and guard post. The convoy commander, Major Colin Tarver, called for a 15-minute maintenance halt. Standard procedure. Drivers could stretch, check their vehicles, hit the latrine. Security would sweep the perimeter. Sloane climbed out of the ambulance, grateful for solid ground beneath her boots. The heat struck her like a physical blow, 104 degrees according to the dashboard thermometer. She took a long drink from her canteen, tasting metal and warm plastic. Voss walked a slow circle around the ambulance, checking tires and panels with the methodical precision of a man who had done this 10,000 times. Quan emerged from her vehicle, young and energetic despite the heat. Beckett, Quan jogged over, grinning. "Want to grab chow? I have MREs that are only 2 years expired." "I am good, you go ahead." Quan's smile faltered. "You okay? You have been quiet all morning." "Just focused." "On what? We are driving through empty desert, not exactly high stress." Before Sloane could respond, Voss called out, "Quan, go get water for your crew. Beckett with me." Quan shot Sloane a curious glance before heading toward the checkpoint building. Voss waited until she was out of earshot, then turned to face Sloane directly. "I need to tell you something." The tone in his voice made Sloane's instincts flare. This was not casual conversation. This was official. She straightened. "Sergeant." "I was assigned to this convoy for a specific reason," Voss said quietly. "Command ordered me to conduct a psychological evaluation of you, Corporal Beckett, to assess your fitness for return to combat medicine." The words hit her like cold water. "You have been watching me for 9 months." "Observing, yes." "Why?" "Because your psychological evaluations after Outpost 17 were concerning. Survivor guilt, suicidal ideation, revenge fantasies." Sloane felt her jaw tighten. "I passed all my psych evals." "You passed the minimum requirements. That does not mean you were ready." Voss's expression softened slightly. "They wanted to know if you could handle field duty, if you could be trusted to make sound medical decisions under stress, if you could save lives without breaking." "And what is your assessment, Sergeant?" "Still under evaluation." Sloane wanted to say something, anything, but the words would not come. She had spent 9 months thinking she was hiding from her past, only to discover her past had been assigned to watch her the entire time. Voss gestured toward the center of the convoy, where a reinforced transport truck sat between 2 Humvees. The truck had blacked-out windows and extra armor plating. 4 military police guards stood around it in full combat gear. "See that vehicle?" Voss asked. "Hard to miss." "Do you know what it is carrying?" "Above my pay grade." "Prisoner transport. High-value target being moved to a detention facility for court-martial proceedings. Classified identity. Command believes there may be an intercept attempt en route." Sloane studied the transport truck. The MPs carried M4 carbines with lethal authorization patches visible on their shoulders. Not standard for prisoner transport. This was someone important, someone dangerous, or both. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Voss met her gaze. "Because if something happens, I need to know you will do your job, save lives, even if those lives complicate your personal feelings." "My personal feelings do not affect my medical decisions." "Do they not?" Before Sloane could answer, Major Tarver's voice crackled over the radio. "All stations, this is actual. Maintenance complete. Mount up. We move in 5. Voss held Sloane's gaze for another moment, then walked back toward the ambulance. Sloane followed, mind spinning. She had thought this convoy was routine, safe, an escape from the weight of memory and guilt. She should have known better. Nothing was ever safe. Nothing was ever routine. And the past had a way of finding you no matter how fast you ran. The convoy rolled out at 09:15. They left the checkpoint behind and pushed deeper into empty country. The landscape shifted from flat scrubland to rough terrain, low hills rising on either side of the highway. Sloane felt her combat instincts stirring, the part of her brain that had learned to read terrain for ambush positions and kill zones. This was bad ground, narrow road, hills close on both sides, limited visibility, single route in and out, perfect place for an attack. She keyed her radio. Actual, this is Beckett. Recommend we consider alternative routing. Current terrain is tactically disadvantageous. Major Tarver's response came back clipped and professional. Negative, Beckett. This route is mandated. We stay in formation. Sir, with respect, we are exposed here. No air cover. Restricted maneuver space. If hostile forces wanted to hit us, this would be the place. Noted, Corporal. Hold your position. The radio went silent. Voss glanced at her. You think like a soldier, not a convoy driver. I think like someone who wants to stay alive. Good instincts, keep them sharp. The convoy entered a canyon pass. Walls of red rock rose 300 feet on either side, casting deep shadows across the road. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The wind died. Everything became still and quiet except for the rumble of diesel engines echoing off stone. Sloane scanned the ridgelines. Nothing visible, but her hands gripped the wheel tighter anyway. Something felt wrong. That animal sense that had kept her alive through 3 years of combat was screaming at her now. Then she saw it, a flash of reflected sunlight on the north ridge, quick, gone in an instant. Her voice came out sharp. Contact, north ridge, possible optic reflection. Voss grabbed binoculars, scanning the area. I do not see anything. It was there, I saw it. Could have been mica in the rocks, sun hitting quartz. Could have been a scope. Voss lowered the binoculars, studied her face. You are on edge, Beckett. I am alert. There is a difference between alert and paranoid. Before Sloane could argue, the world exploded. The RPG came from the south ridge, a streak of smoke and flame that slammed into the lead Humvee's engine block with a sound like the end of the world. The explosion lifted the front of the vehicle 6 feet off the ground before it crashed back down in a shower of twisted metal and burning fuel. Black smoke billowed skyward. The convoy lurched to a stop, blocked by the wreckage. For one frozen second, everything was silent except for the ringing in Sloane's ears. Then the gunfire started. Automatic weapons opened up from 3 positions: North Ridge, South Ridge, canyon mouth behind them. The convoy was boxed in, caught in a kill zone with nowhere to run. Bullets sparked off armor, shattered windows, tore through canvas covers on supply trucks. The air filled with the crack and whine of supersonic rounds passing inches from flesh. Sloane's body moved on pure instinct. Get down! She threw the ambulance into park, killed the engine, grabbed her rifle. Voss was already on the radio, calling for contact report. Sloane kicked open her door, using it for cover, and brought her M4 up to scan for targets. The ambush was precise, professional. Every firing position was textbook perfect, interlocking fields of fire, cover and concealment, disciplined burst patterns. This was not militia or opportunistic bandits. This was military trained. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Sloane's training took over completely. 3 years of muscle memory overrode 9 months of trying to forget. She identified threats, calculated angles, and returned fire with controlled 3-round bursts. Her shots were not aimed to kill, just to suppress. Keep heads down. Buy time for the convoy to organize a defense. But even as she fired, a cold part of her brain was analyzing the attack pattern. The shooters were not targeting the convoy broadly. They were focusing fire on one specific vehicle. The prisoner transport. They are after the cargo, Sloane shouted over the gunfire. Transport truck is primary target. Voss relayed the information to Tarver. The major's voice came back strained but steady. All units, return fire. Protect the transport. Medic, we have casualties in the lead vehicle. Multiple wounded. Sloane's stomach dropped. The lead Humvee was burning 30 meters ahead. She could see movement inside the wreckage. Soldiers trapped, wounded, dying. She grabbed her medical aid bag. Voss caught her arm. Beckett, what are you doing? My job. You will be exposed. 30 meters of open ground under fire. Those soldiers will die if someone does not reach them. Then I will go. I am senior medic. Sloane met his eyes. You are evaluating me, Sergeant. This is your chance to see if I can handle it. For a moment, Voss said nothing. Then he released her arm. You have 3 minutes, then I am coming after you. Sloane shouldered the aid bag and keyed her radio. All stations, this is Beckett. I am moving to assist the lead vehicle. Request covering fire on north and south ridges. Major Tarver's voice crackled back. Beckett, negative. You will be in the open. Wait for suppression first. But Sloane was already moving. She broke from the cover of the ambulance and sprinted toward the burning Humvee. The medical bag bounced against her back. Her rifle was gripped tight in both hands. 30 meters had never felt longer. The ground seemed to stretch and warp beneath her boots. Every step felt like running through water. Bullets cracked past her head. She heard the distinctive snap of rounds passing within inches. One kicked up dirt 3 feet to her left. Another sparked off a rock near her right boot. The convoy's 50 caliber guns opened up behind her, hammering the ridgelines with suppressive fire, but it was not enough. The shooters were dug in. Professional. Disciplined. She ran anyway. At 20 meters, a burst of automatic fire tore through the space she had occupied a half-second earlier. At 15 meters, she felt the pressure wave of a round passing so close it stirred the air against her cheek. At 10 meters, she dove and rolled behind a slight rise in the terrain, using every bit of micro cover available. Then she was there, throwing herself against the burning Humvee's twisted armor, chest heaving, heart slamming against her ribs. She was alive, somehow untouched. The shock of it hit her like cold water. But there was no time to process. She could hear voices inside the wreckage, screaming, calling for help. Medic here, Sloane shouted toward the cabin. Who is hit? A strained voice answered through the smoke. Driver and gunner down bad. TC has got frag wounds. We are pinned. Sloane moved to the passenger side, staying low, using the vehicle's bulk for cover. The door was crushed but still partially functional. She wrenched it open and squeezed through. Inside was hell. Private First Class Daniels, the driver, was slumped over the wheel, blood streaming from multiple fragmentation wounds across his arms and face. Conscious but in shock. His left arm bent at an unnatural angle. Broken radius, maybe ulna too. The wounds were messy but not immediately fatal if treated quickly. The gunner was worse, much worse. He was unconscious, still half jammed in the turret, his body weight pinning him in place. Blood pooled beneath his tactical vest. Shrapnel had torn through his chest and abdomen in at least 3 places. His breathing was rapid and shallow, tension pneumothorax, maybe internal bleeding, maybe both. The truck commander, a lieutenant whose name tape read Holloway, had taken fragmentation wounds to his legs and was using a belt as an improvised tourniquet. He would live if they could get him out. But the gunner had minutes, maybe less. I need hands on the gunner, Sloane barked to Holloway and the specialist in the back seat. Now. They worked together in the cramped, smoke-filled cabin, struggling to free the unconscious soldier from the turret. Bullets continued to pepper the ground outside. One round punched through the already shattered windshield and buried itself in the seat padding 6 inches from Sloane's knee. She did not flinch, did not stop working. They finally pulled the gunner free and lowered him onto the floor. Sloane dropped beside him, her world narrowing to the sound of his labored breathing and the rapid calculations running through her mind. His chest was not rising evenly, left side barely moving, air trapped in the pleural space. The pressure was collapsing his lung and compressing his heart. He would be dead in 3 minutes if she did not act. Sloane's hands moved with automatic precision, following procedures drilled into her through hundreds of hours of training. She located the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, felt for landmarks, swabbed with alcohol, then plunged a 14-gauge needle catheter between his ribs at a 90-degree angle. The trapped air released with a hiss. His breathing eased immediately, not cured but stable enough to buy time. Next, the bleeding. She cinched a tourniquet high on his left thigh where shrapnel had opened his femoral artery. The arterial spray stopped. She established 2 large-bore IV lines, started fluids, slapped combat gauze and occlusive dressings over the worst of the chest wounds. The entire sequence took 90 seconds. Daniels was next. Sloane splinted his broken arm, dressed his facial lacerations, started an IV for pain management and fluids. Holloway's tourniquet was good, so she left it in place and focused on stabilizing him for transport. All the while, gunfire continued. The noise was constant, overwhelming, but Sloane worked through it, hands steady, mind clear. This was what she had been trained to do. This was who she was beneath the 9 months of running and hiding. She was a combat medic, and combat medics did not quit. "I need to get them to the ambulance," Sloane called to Holloway. "Can you walk?" "I can hop if someone helps." "Good, specialist, you take Daniels. I will carry the gunner. Move on my mark." She keyed her radio. "Voss, I am coming back with 3 casualties. Critical, urgent, and minimal. I need covering fire and help with evacuation." "Copy," Voss replied. "We are ready." Sloane loaded the gunner onto her shoulders in a fireman's carry. He was deadweight, easily 180 pounds. She gritted her teeth, found her balance, and prepared to move. Then Specialist Owen Reese appeared at the Humvee's door. The convoy truck driver from Vehicle 6, 26 years old, quiet, competent. He had a cut on his forehead and his uniform was torn, but he was moving under his own power. "I am here to help," Owen said simply. "Take Daniels," Sloane ordered. "Get him to the ambulance." "What about you?" "I have got the gunner. Move." Owen grabbed Daniels, supporting him as they stumbled out of the wreckage. Holloway followed, hopping on one leg with the specialist's help. Sloane came last, the gunner heavy across her shoulders, every step an exercise in balance and will. The convoys covering fire intensified. The big .50 caliber guns hammered the ridgelines with suppressive bursts. M4s cracked from every vehicle. Smoke grenades popped, laying down a screen. It was not much, but it was enough. Sloane ran. The weight on her shoulders wanted to pull her down. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. Bullets still snapped through the air, but fewer now and less accurate through the smoke. She focused on putting one boot in front of the other, on reaching the ambulance, on keeping the soldier across her shoulders alive for 30 more seconds. 20 seconds. 10. She reached the ambulance and nearly collapsed getting the gunner inside. Voss and Quan were there immediately, taking over, setting up IVs and monitoring vitals. Owen helped load Daniels. The specialist brought Holloway. Sloane leaned against the ambulance's rear door, gasping for breath, her uniform soaked with sweat and blood. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She had just run through a kill zone twice and lived. The realization hit her in waves. Owen appeared beside her, offering a canteen. That was the bravest thing I have ever seen. Sloane took a long drink, tasted metal and plastic and life. It was the only thing. How did you make those shots earlier? 400 meters. You put rounds exactly where you wanted them. And that run through the open. He shook his head. You are not just a convoy driver, are you? Before Sloane could answer, the gunfire stopped. All at once, suddenly, the silence was almost more shocking than the noise had been. Sloane grabbed her rifle and scanned the ridgelines. Nothing, no movement, no muzzle flashes. Then a voice crackled over an open radio frequency. Not military channels, not encrypted, just raw transmission that every radio in the convoy could hear. All convoy units, this is the intercept team, stand down, we are withdrawing. Major Tarver's voice cut through immediately. Identify yourself, who is this? You do not need our names, you just need to know we are done here. Negative, you are engaged with U.S. military forces. Surrender immediately. A pause, then, we made a mistake, wrong target, intel was bad, we are pulling back. Sloane felt ice spread through her chest. Wrong target, wrong prisoner. That meant they knew exactly who the convoy was transporting. That meant someone had given them intelligence. That meant this was not random. This was planned, coordinated, specific. Tarver was shouting orders. Secure the perimeter, head count, casualty report, verify prisoner status. The convoy shifted into damage control mode. MPs rushed to the transport truck. Medics began triaging the wounded. Sloane stood frozen, watching as the MPs opened the reinforced door of the prisoner transport. A figure emerged, hands cuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit and a black hood. The MPs removed the hood. The world stopped. Sloane knew that face, would know it anywhere, had seen it in nightmares for 2 years. Gray hair cut military short, hard eyes, a scar along the left jaw. 52 years old but looking older now, worn down by confinement and guilt. Or maybe not guilt, maybe just inconvenience. Colonel Raymond Drexler. Regional Commander, Strategic Operations Officer, the man who had abandoned Outpost 17 to die. Sloane's rifle fell from numb fingers. She could not breathe, could not think. All she could do was stare at the man who had murdered 23 soldiers and shattered her life. Images flooded back, radio crackling, lieutenant begging, Drexler's voice flat and emotionless. All units abandon Outpost 17. Repeat, abandon and withdraw. That is a direct order. The sound of insurgents breaking through the perimeter, the screams of her friends. Corporal Daniel Morrow taking 3 rounds to the chest. Private Lisa Cole bleeding out in Sloane's arms, whispering, "Tell my dad I love him," with her last breath. The lieutenant trying to fire his empty weapon with his shattered arm. The weight of bodies collapsing on top of her as the wall came down. The smell of blood and cordite and dust. 14 hours lying motionless under corpses, waiting, listening, playing dead while enemy soldiers walked over the pile, laughing and joking as they looted the bodies. 23 soldiers, 23 families destroyed, all because one man decided they were acceptable losses. And here he was, standing 30 feet away, alive, breathing, while Sloane's friends rotted in graves at Arlington. Voss appeared beside her, his voice low and urgent. "Beckett, stay with me. You are in shock." She was not in shock, she was in hell. Drexler's eyes swept the convoy, assessing damage. Then they found her. Recognition flickered across his face. He knew who she was. Of course he knew. She was famous. The sole survivor. The ghost who had crawled out from under the dead. His voice carried across the space between them, calm and measured. "Corporal Beckett, Outpost 17, so you did survive." Sloane heard her own voice as if from a great distance. "You killed them." "It was a strategic decision." "You killed all of them." Drexler's expression did not change. "I read the after-action report. You showed remarkable resilience. I am glad you made it." Sloane took one step forward, then another. Her hand drifted toward her sidearm. She did not remember deciding to move. Her body was acting on its own now, driven by 2 years of rage and grief finally given a target. Voss grabbed her arm. "Beckett, no, stand down." "He killed them." "I know, but you do not get to be judge and jury. Stand down." Sloane's vision blurred. She realized distantly that she was crying. The tears had finally come, 2 years too late. Her legs gave out and she sat down hard on the rocky ground. Owen crouched beside her. Quan was there too. The entire convoy was watching the convoy driver who was not just a convoy driver, watching the ghost reveal herself. Tarver approached, his expression grim. "Corporal Beckett, report." She could not speak. Tarver looked at Voss. "Sergeant, what is going on?" Voss met his gaze steadily. "Corporal Beckett is the sole survivor of Outpost 17. Colonel Drexler was the officer who issued the abandonment order." Understanding dawned on Tarver's face, then horror, then anger. Command put a 17 survivor on the same convoy as Drexler. Who authorized this? "I did not know the prisoner's identity," Voss said. "The assignment orders were classified." "This is unacceptable. I am filing a formal complaint." Tarver turned to Sloane. "Corporal, can you continue?" She looked up at him, looked at Voss, at Owen, at Quan, at the burning Humvee and the wounded soldiers and the blood on her hands. Could she continue? She had just saved 3 lives, had run through fire to reach the wounded, had proven she could still do the job when it mattered. But the job had just gotten infinitely harder. Because now she had to keep alive the man who had killed her family. Sloane forced herself to stand. Her legs shook but held. She met Tarver's gaze. "Sir, I can continue." "Are you certain?" No, she was not certain of anything anymore. But she was a soldier, and soldiers did their jobs even when the job was impossible. "Yes, sir." Tarver studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All units prepare to move out. We need to clear this kill zone and reach the detention facility. Stay alert. There may be secondary attacks." The convoy began organizing for movement. Sloane returned to the ambulance. She mechanically checked her patients. The gunner was stable. Daniels was conscious. Holloway would make it. All 3 would live because she had gotten to them in time. She had done her job. But inside she was screaming. Drexler was loaded back into the transport truck under heavy MP guard. As they sealed the door, his eyes found Sloane one more time. He did not look apologetic, did not look guilty, just calm, accepting, as if abandoning 23 soldiers to their deaths was simply another day at the office. Voss climbed into the passenger seat beside her. "Can you drive?" "Yes." "Beckett, I need you to understand something. This is still an evaluation. What you do next will determine everything: your career, your future, your ability to serve." "I understand." "Do you?" Voss turned to face her directly. "Because right now, you are being asked to protect the man who destroyed your life, to keep him alive, to fulfill your oath as a medic even though every fiber of your being wants him dead." Sloane gripped the steering wheel. "What is your point, Sergeant?" "My point is that this is the test, not the convoy, not the ambush. This, right here. Can you put duty above vengeance? Can you be the medic your father raised you to be?" The convoy began to move. Sloane put the ambulance in gear and followed. Her hands were steady on the wheel. Her eyes were clear. She had made her choice. She would do her duty. She would keep everyone alive, even the man who did not deserve it. Because that was what medics did. But as the convoy rolled deeper into the canyon, leaving the burning Humvee behind, Sloane could not stop hearing the echo of 23 voices calling for help that never came. And she knew with absolute certainty that this mission was far from over. The attackers had said wrong prisoner, wrong target. That meant they would be back. And next time, Sloane might not be able to save everyone. She might have to choose. The convoy moved like a wounded animal through the canyon, slower now, more cautious. 30 minutes had passed since the ambush. 30 minutes since Sloane Beckett's world had collapsed and rebuilt itself into something she did not recognize. She drove the ambulance with mechanical precision, hands steady on the wheel, eyes forward, mind everywhere except the present. Behind her in the cargo area, 3 wounded soldiers lay stabilized but critical. Beside her, Master Sergeant Dale Voss watched the road and occasionally glanced at her with an expression she could not read. And somewhere ahead in the reinforced transport truck, Colonel Raymond Drexler sat in chains, alive and breathing, while 23 ghosts screamed in Sloane's memory. The radio crackled with routine traffic, position reports, fuel status, casualty updates, normal convoy operations, as if the world had not just split open and revealed the rot beneath. Major Tarver's voice cut through the chatter. "All stations, we are approaching the secondary route. Estimated time to detention facility is 4 hours. Stay alert. Intel suggests possible follow-up action." 4 hours, 240 minutes, 14,400 seconds of keeping Colonel Raymond Drexler alive. Sloane's jaw tightened. Voss spoke quietly, meant only for her. "You need to talk about what just happened." "No, I do not." "Beckett, you had a full dissociative episode back there. You dropped your weapon. You nearly drew your sidearm on a prisoner. That is not operational readiness." "I am operational." "Are you?" Still not a question. Voss shifted in his seat, turning to face her directly. "I have been evaluating you for 9 months, watching how you handle stress, how you interact with casualties, how you make decisions under pressure. Today was supposed to be the final assessment." Supposed to be. I did not know Drexler would be on this convoy. Command classified the prisoner's identity above my clearance level. They sent me to evaluate your psychological fitness for combat medicine, but they did not tell me they were putting you in the same vehicle as the man who destroyed your life. Sloane's hands tightened on the wheel. "So this is what? Incompetence or cruelty?" "I honestly do not know." They drove in silence for another mile. The canyon walls began to recede, opening into broader terrain. Scrubland stretched in every direction, broken only by the ribbon of highway and the heat shimmer rising from black asphalt. Sloane's voice came out flat. "What happens now with the evaluation?" "That depends on the next 4 hours." "You want to see if I can keep him alive?" "I want to see if you can keep everyone alive, including yourself." Voss paused, choosing his next words carefully. 17 broke something in you, Beckett. I have read the psychological reports. Survivor guilt, intrusive thoughts, emotional numbing, classic PTSD markers. You passed the minimum requirements, but barely. I did my job today. I saved 3 soldiers under fire. You did, brilliantly. But then you saw Drexler and everything fell apart. That is the problem. You are an exceptional medic when the emotional stakes are clear. Save the wounded. Fight the enemy. Simple moral equations, but what happens when the equations get complicated? Sloane did not answer, could not answer, because she did not know. The radio crackled again. "Beckett, this is Quan. How are our patients?" Sloane keyed her mic, grateful for the distraction. "Stable. Gunner is holding. Daniels and Holloway are conscious and responsive." "Copy." A pause. "Are you okay? You looked pretty shaken back there." "I am fine." "Beckett, I heard what Tarver said about Outpost 17, about you being the survivor." Quan's voice softened. "I cannot imagine what that was like." Sloane released the mic without responding. She did not want sympathy, did not want understanding. She wanted the convoy to reach its destination so she could get away from Raymond Drexler before she did something that would destroy what remained of her career. But 4 hours was a long time, and the desert had a way of making time stretch and warp until minutes felt like days. At 1100 hours, Major Tarver called for another stop, security sweep and fuel check. The convoy pulled into a small staging area, nothing more than a widened section of road with sight lines in every direction. No cover, no ambush positions, safe as anywhere could be in hostile territory. The MPs moved Drexler from the transport truck to the ambulance. Tarver's orders were clear. The prisoner needed to be under constant medical observation. His court-martial was in 48 hours. Command wanted him delivered alive and healthy. No complications, no excuses. Which meant Drexler would be riding in the ambulance with Sloane for the next 4 hours. The MPs secured him to a bench seat in the cargo area, hands cuffed to a restraint bar, ankles shackled. 2 guards positioned themselves at the rear door. Drexler sat calmly, his orange jumpsuit stark against the gray interior, his expression neutral. Sloane stood outside the ambulance, staring at the open door, unable to make herself climb back in. Voss appeared beside her. "You can do this." "Can I?" "Yes, because you are a professional, because you took an oath, because 23 soldiers would want you to be better than the man who killed them." The words hit like a physical blow. Sloane closed her eyes, fighting for control. When she opened them again, Owen Reese was approaching, carrying 2 canteens and an MRE. "Thought you might need water," Owen said, offering the canteen. "And food. You have not eaten since breakfast." Sloane took the canteen but not the food. "Thank you." "That was incredible what you did back there, running through the kill zone, treating those casualties under fire. I have never seen anything like it." "It was just training." "Training does not cover that kind of courage." Owen glanced at the ambulance, at Drexler visible through the open door. "I heard about 17, about what he did. How are you handling this?" "1 minute at a time." Owen studied her face, concern evident in his eyes. He was 26, young enough to still believe the world made sense, old enough to understand it rarely did. "If you need to talk, I am here, not as a soldier, just as someone who cares." The sincerity in his voice made something crack in Sloane's chest. She had spent 9 months keeping everyone at arm's length, refusing connection, afraid that caring would make the ghost scream louder. But Owen's quiet offer of support felt like the first solid ground she had touched in months. "I appreciate that," she said, "but I have to focus on the mission right now." "I understand, just remember the offer stands, anytime." He walked back to his vehicle. Sloane watched him go, something warm and unfamiliar stirring beneath the ice. Then she turned and climbed into the ambulance. Drexler looked up as she entered. His eyes were gray, calm, measuring. the eyes of a man who had made impossible decisions and learned to live with the consequences. "Corporal Beckett," he said quietly, "I would like to speak with you." "No." "I understand your anger. I would feel the same in your position. But there are things you should know about Outpost 17, things that were not in the official reports." Sloane sat in the medic's seat, as far from Drexler as the cargo space allowed. "I do not want to hear it." "You deserve to hear it." "What I deserve is for 23 soldiers to still be alive." Drexler was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been regret, or might have been calculation. It was impossible to tell. 17 was a strategic outpost monitoring insurgent supply routes. You were there with 23 other soldiers, 1 lieutenant, 1 medic, 22 infantry. Correct. Sloane said nothing. The attack came at dawn. 200 insurgents, heavily armed, coordinated assault. Your lieutenant called for reinforcements. I told him support was en route. I told him to hold position. That was true. Reinforcements were coming. Then why did you abandon us? Because Division Command issued a direct order. Redirect all assets to support Operation Steel Rain 5 kilometers west. A major offensive was underway. Every available unit was needed. I was told 17 was acceptable collateral damage. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sloane turned to face him fully. Acceptable collateral damage. Those were the exact words in the order. I argued. I told them 17 could not hold without support. They said the larger operation took priority. 1 outpost versus an entire battalion offensive. The math was clear. The math. Sloane's voice was deadly quiet. 23 human beings reduced to math. Yes, Drexler met her gaze without flinching. That is what command is, Corporal. Making choices where someone always dies, choosing who lives and who does not. The burden of rank is learning to live with those choices. You could have refused the order. I could have. I would have been court-martialed for insubordination. My career would have ended. And 17 would have been abandoned anyway by whoever replaced me. The outcome would have been identical, except I would have destroyed myself for nothing. Sloane felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp. So you saved your career and let them die. I followed orders from superior officers. That is military discipline. That is the chain of command. You of all people should understand that. I understand that 23 soldiers begged for help, and you turned your back. I made an impossible choice, one I have to live with every day. Drexler's expression did not change. No tears, no breakdown, just cold acceptance. I am going to court-martial. I will likely be convicted. My career is over regardless. My legacy is ashes. I am paying the price for that choice. But I want you to know I did not make it lightly. I did not abandon 17 because I did not care. I did it because I was ordered to sacrifice them for a greater objective. And what objective was worth 23 lives? That is still classified. Sloane laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. Of course it is. The convoy began moving again. Voss climbed into the driver's seat. Piper Quan joined them in the cargo area to monitor the wounded soldiers. The ambulance rolled forward, leaving the staging area behind, pushing deeper into empty country. Drexler closed his eyes and leaned his head against the wall. Conversation over. Confession complete. As if explaining his reasoning would somehow absolve him. But Sloane knew the truth. Explanations did not bring back the dead. Understanding did not erase the screams. Drexler could justify his decision with operational necessity and chain of command, but at the end of the day, 23 soldiers had died because he valued his career more than their lives. That was the simple truth, beneath all the strategic complexity. and Sloane would carry that truth for the rest of her life. She closed her eyes and let the memory take her. The name tape on Drexler's uniform caught the light, black letters on orange fabric, just 2 syllables, but those syllables were a key turning in a lock she had kept sealed for 2 years. The ambulance faded, the present dissolved, and suddenly Sloane was back. Outpost 17, 2 years ago, dawn breaking over the Afghan mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The outpost sat on a rocky plateau, nothing more than sandbag walls, a communications tower, and 4 plywood structures that served as barracks, command post, and medical station. 24 soldiers, 1 lieutenant, 1 medic, 22 infantry. Their mission was simple: observe the valley below, report insurgent movement, do not engage unless engaged first. It was supposed to be a quiet posting. Intelligence said the area was low priority, minimal hostile activity. 3 months of watching empty mountains and filing reports no one would read. Corporal Daniel Morrow sat on the wall beside Sloane, cleaning his rifle in the early morning light. 22 years old, sniper, 3rd-generation Army. He had a photo of his father Jack tucked into his helmet band. Retired Ranger. Daniel talked about him constantly. How his dad had taught him to shoot, how proud his dad was when he enlisted, how his dad said the Morrows always served with honor. "You think we will see any action out here?" Daniel asked, squinting at the valley below. "Hope not," Sloane replied. She was 22 then, fresh out of combat medic training, eager to prove herself but terrified of failing. "I would rather be bored than busy." "Where is the glory in boredom?" "There is no glory in medicine, just keeping people alive." Daniel grinned. "My dad says medics are the real heroes, says it takes more courage to run toward the wounded than to fire your weapon." "Your dad sounds smart." "He is, you would like him. He is like you, thinks too much, worries about everyone." Private Lisa Cole appeared, carrying morning coffee in battered metal cups, 21 years old, demolition specialist, daughter of Sergeant First Class Martin Cole, a combat medic instructor Sloane had trained under. Lisa had her father's eyes and her father's intensity. She handed Daniel his coffee and sat beside them on the wall. "Beautiful morning," she said. "Last one," Daniel joked. "Do not say that, you will jinx us." "Jinxes are not real." "Tell that to the guys who said that yesterday and got blown up by an IED." They laughed, easy laughter born of youth and the false immortality soldiers carry into combat. None of them believed death would find them. Death was something that happened to other units, other soldiers, other people. Not them. Lieutenant Hayes joined them, clipboard in hand. 30 years old, career officer, competent but uninspired. Morning briefing in 10 minutes. Finish your coffee and get inside. The briefing was routine. No changes to mission parameters. Intel showed minimal activity in the valley. Air support on standby if needed. Reinforcements 30 minutes away if requested. Everything by the book. Everything safe. By 0600 hours, everyone was at their posts. Sloane sat in the medical station, restocking supplies and reviewing trauma protocols she hoped she would never use. Outside, the sun climbed higher, turning the plateau into an oven. At 0637, the world ended. The mortar rounds came first. 6 of them, walking across the outpost in a perfect line, blowing sandbags and equipment into the sky. Then the small arms fire. Dozens of weapons firing simultaneously from the ridges on 3 sides. Then the RPGs, streaking in like angry hornets, slamming into the walls and buildings with devastating precision. The attack was overwhelming, professional, coordinated. 200 insurgents at minimum, equipped with military-grade weapons, executing a textbook assault on a fixed position. Outpost 17 had no chance. Sloane grabbed her aid bag and ran toward the sounds of screaming. The first casualty was Private Martinez, both legs shredded by shrapnel. She dragged him into cover, started tourniquets, tried to block out the sound of bullets snapping overhead. Lieutenant Hayes was on the radio, voice strained but controlled. "Overwatch, this is 17. We are under heavy attack. 200-plus hostiles, coordinated assault, need immediate air support and reinforcements." The response came back through static. Colonel Raymond Drexler's voice, calm and professional. 17, this is Overwatch. Reinforcements are en route. ETA 30 minutes. Hold your position. Air support inbound in 45. Hold position. Copy Overwatch, we will hold. But 30 minutes was an eternity under fire, and 45 minutes for air support might as well have been forever. Sloane worked through the carnage. Gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, burns from RPG impacts. The medical station became a slaughterhouse, blood pooling on the floor, wounded soldiers crying for help she could not provide fast enough. Daniel Morrow was up in the guard tower, his sniper rifle cracking methodically, each shot dropping an insurgent at 500 meters. Lisa Cole was throwing grenades, buying time with every explosion. The defenders fought with everything they had, holding the line through sheer will and desperation. But the insurgents kept coming, wave after wave. The perimeter started to collapse. At 0700 hours, Lieutenant Hayes radioed again. "Overwatch 17. We are at 30% combat effective. Half our force is wounded or dead. We need extraction now." Drexler's voice came back, still calm, still professional. 17, reinforcements are 20 minutes out. Hold position. "Sir, we cannot hold for 20 minutes. We need emergency extract. Immediate." A pause, then, -17. "All air assets are committed to other operations. You need to hold." "What other operations? You said we were priority." Another pause, longer this time. When Drexler spoke again, his voice carried a different quality. Final, absolute. 17, new orders from division. All units are directed to support Operation Steel Rain 5 kilometers west. Major offensive underway. You are ordered to hold in place and deny the enemy your position as long as possible. "Sir, if you withdraw support, we will be overrun. We will die." "That is understood, Lieutenant. Your sacrifice will enable the larger operation to succeed. Hold your position. That is a direct order." "Overwatch, please. We have wounded. We have soldiers who will not make it without extraction. I am begging you." The radio went dead. Not static, not interference, just silence. Lieutenant Hayes stared at the radio, comprehension dawning slowly. They had been abandoned, left to die, sacrificed for some other operation they would never see, never understand, never know succeeded or failed. He keyed the mic one more time. "Overwatch, this is 17. Do not do this. Do not leave us here." No response. Hayes looked at Sloane, at Daniel, at Lisa, at the 21 other soldiers fighting and dying around him. His face showed everything he felt: rage, disbelief, betrayal, but beneath it all acceptance, because soldiers followed orders, even when the orders meant death. "All stations, this is Hayes. We hold this position until relieved or overrun. We do not surrender. We do not run. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. Understood." A chorus of acknowledgments came back, voices tight with fear but steady with resolve. They held for another hour. But 200 insurgents against 24 soldiers was not a fight. It was an execution. The walls fell. The communications tower toppled, the barracks burned. One by one, the defenders were cut down. Sloane tried to save them, tried to keep them breathing, but there were too many wounds, too much blood, not enough time. Daniel Morrow took 3 rounds to the chest while covering a retreat. He died looking at the photo of his father. His last words were, "Tell him I tried." Lisa Cole bled out in Sloane's arms, shrapnel having torn through her femoral artery. "Tell my dad I love him," she whispered. "Tell him I was brave." "You are brave," Sloane told her. "You are so brave." Lisa smiled, then stopped breathing. 23 soldiers died that morning, some fast, some slow, some screaming, some silent, but all of them died knowing they had been abandoned by the one man who could have saved them. The final assault came at 0800 hours. Insurgents poured over the walls, firing into every building, executing wounded soldiers where they lay. Sloane was in the command post, trying to stabilize Lieutenant Hayes when the roof exploded inward. Beams fell. Walls collapsed. The entire structure came down on top of them. Sloane felt bodies pile on her, felt blood that was not hers run across her face, felt the weight of the dead pressing down until she could barely breathe. She tried to move, could not, tried to call for help, could not. So she did the only thing left to do. She played dead. For 14 hours, she lay motionless under the corpses of her friends, listening to insurgents walk over the pile, listening to them laugh and joke as they looted the bodies, listening to the silence after they left, listening to her own heartbeat and wondering why she deserved to live when everyone else had died. Friendly forces finally retook the plateau at sunset. They pulled her from the rubble, covered in blood and dust and death. The sole survivor, the ghost who had crawled back from the edge. They called her a miracle, said she was lucky, said she was blessed. But Sloane knew the truth. She was not blessed. She was cursed. Cursed to carry the weight of 23 deaths for the rest of her life. Cursed to know that every breath she took was a breath they would never have. Cursed to wonder forever why she survived when better soldiers, braver soldiers, more deserving soldiers had died. And cursed to know that Raymond Drexler had made a choice, a strategic decision, an acceptable loss calculation. 23 soldiers were acceptable losses. Sloane Beckett was the unacceptable remainder. The memory released her. She was back in the ambulance, gasping for breath, sweat running down her face despite the air conditioning. Piper Quan was gripping her shoulder, voice urgent. "Beckett, Sloane, can you hear me?" Sloane nodded, unable to speak. "You were hyperventilating. I thought you were having a seizure." Quan's face showed genuine fear. "What happened?" "Just a memory." That was not just a memory. That was a full PTSD episode. Voss's voice came from the driver's seat. "Beckett, status." "I am operational." "You are not operational. You are barely conscious." Sloane forced herself to sit up straight, forced her breathing to steady. "I am fine. Just give me a minute." But she was not fine. Would never be fine. The flashback had torn open every wound she had spent 2 years trying to close. And the worst part was knowing that Drexler had sat there calmly the entire time, knowing exactly what his decision had cost and feeling nothing. The radio crackled. A new voice, not military channels, not encrypted, just raw broadcast across open frequencies. "Major Tarver, this is Jack Morrow. I know you can hear me." The convoy slowed. Tarver's voice came back immediately. "This is Tarver. Identify yourself properly. Who is Jack Morrow?" "Father of Corporal Daniel Morrow, 22 years old, sniper, 3rd generation Army, died at Outpost 17 when Colonel Raymond Drexler abandoned him to save his own career." Sloane felt ice spread through her chest. "You are transporting Drexler in that convoy," Jack Morrow continued. "We know because we have friends in command, friends who told us when and where you would be moving him, friends who want justice same as we do." Tarver's voice hardened. "Mr. Morrow, you are interfering with a military operation. Stand down immediately." "No, Major. You are protecting a war criminal. We are here to correct that mistake." "Drexler is in military custody awaiting court-martial. He will face justice through proper channels." "Court-martial?" Jack's voice carried bitter laughter. "His lawyers will argue operational necessity, fog of war, chain of command. He will claim he was just following orders, and some judge will believe him. He will get a slap on the wrist, maybe a dishonorable discharge, maybe a few years in prison, maybe nothing at all. That is not your decision to make. It is now. We gave you a chance to leave him earlier. You refused, so we are giving you one more chance. Release Colonel Raymond Drexler into our custody. We will ensure he faces real justice, the kind that does not hide behind lawyers and technicalities." "Negative. He remains in military custody." "Then we are coming for him, and anyone who stands in our way will be considered an enemy combatant." The transmission ended. Silence filled the convoy, then Tarver's voice, hard and certain. "All units prepare for second attack. Establish defensive perimeter. Lethal force authorized on any hostile contact." The convoy pulled into a defensive formation, vehicles creating a circle in the open desert. There was no cover, no advantage, just flat ground and clear sight lines in every direction. If Jack Morrow's team attacked here, it would be a straight fight. No ambush, no surprise, just violence meeting violence. Sloane climbed out of the ambulance, her M4 rifle feeling heavy in her hands. Around the perimeter, soldiers took positions behind vehicles, scanning the horizon for threats. Owen appeared beside her. "Are they really going to attack? Families of the 17 casualties." "Yes." "Can you blame them?" Sloane looked at him. "Can you?" Owen had no answer. Drexler remained in the ambulance under MP guard, his expression unchanged. If he felt fear, he did not show it. Perhaps after 2 years of knowing this day would come, he had accepted it as inevitable. Voss joined Sloane at the perimeter. "Your evaluation just got more complicated." "How so?" "Because in about 30 minutes, men who have every right to hate Drexler are going to attack this convoy. Men whose sons and daughters died because of his decision. And you are going to be caught in the middle of a moral equation with no right answer." "There is a right answer. We follow orders. We protect our prisoner. That is military discipline." "Even if those orders mean protecting a man who murdered your friends." Sloane did not answer. The minutes crawled past. 15, 20, 30. The sun climbed toward noon, turning the desert into a crucible. Sweat ran down faces. Hands gripped weapons. Eyes scanned the shimmering horizon. Then movement. 8 figures appeared in the distance, walking slowly toward the convoy. Not running, not hiding, just walking with the deliberate pace of men who had made peace with what came next. Jack Morrow led them. Late 30s, broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled precision of someone who had spent decades in uniform. Behind him, 7 other men, all ages, all carrying rifles, all walking toward their own deaths with calm certainty. Tarver's voice cut across the radio. "Hostile contact. 8 individuals approaching from the south. All stations hold fire until my command." The 8 men stopped at 100 meters. Jack Morrow raised a megaphone. "Major Tarver, give us Drexler. No one else needs to die today." "Mr. Morrow, you are committing an act of terrorism. Turn around and leave. This is your final warning. My son was 22 years old. He called me 3 days before he died, said he was scared, said the outpost felt wrong. I told him to trust his commanders. I told him the army would not abandon him. I was wrong. I understand your pain. You understand nothing. You did not watch your child's casket lowered into the ground. You did not tell his mother that her baby was never coming home. You did not stand at attention while they played taps and handed you a folded flag as if that somehow made up for everything. Mr. Morrow, I am sorry for your loss, but this is not justice. This is revenge. Then call it revenge. I do not care about words anymore. I care about making sure the man who killed my son faces consequences. Jack lowered the megaphone, raised his rifle. 7 men beside him did the same. Tarver's voice rang out. All stations WAPONS free. Engage hostile targets. But before anyone could fire, a voice cut through the chaos. Wait. Sergeant First Class Martin Cole stepped forward from Jack's group, hands raised, rifle slung across his back. Sloane recognized him immediately. Her instructor from combat medic school 4 years ago, a legend in the medical corps, father of Private Lisa Cole. Her friend, her sister in arms, dead at 21. Major Tarver, Martin Cole called out, permission to approach under flag of truce. Tarver hesitated, then approached slowly, hands visible, any threatening move and you will be fired upon. Cole walked forward, hands high, until he stood 20 meters from the convoy. His eyes found Sloane. Corporal Beckett, do you remember me? I remember Sergeant Cole. My daughter Lisa, you were with her when she died. Yes. Did she suffer? The question hit like a hammer. Sloane forced herself to answer. No, it was fast. A lie. Lisa had bled out over 90 seconds, terrified and in agony, begging Sloane to save her. But some truths were too cruel to speak aloud. Thank you, Cole said quietly, then louder to the entire convoy. We are not terrorists. We are fathers, brothers, husbands. We are the families Raymond Drexler destroyed when he abandoned Outpost 17. Sergeant Cole, Tarver replied, stand down. Let the court-martial proceed. Trust the system. The system failed our children, Major. The same system that ordered Drexler to abandon them. The same system that will now protect him with lawyers and classified evidence and operational necessity arguments. We cannot trust a system that values careers over lives. Then what do you want? Justice, real justice, not a trial that will take years and end with a slap on the wrist. Give us Drexler. We will ensure he faces consequences appropriate to his crimes. You mean execution without trial? I mean accountability, something the military has failed to provide. Tarver's voice hardened. I will not hand over a prisoner to vigilantes. That is not how this works. Cole's shoulders slumped. Then I am sorry, Major, but we cannot leave without him. He walked back to Jack Morrow's position. The 8 men raised their rifles. Sloane found herself moving forward, stepping between the convoy and the attackers, her M4 lowered but ready. Beckett, what are you doing? Voss shouted. She did not know, did not have an answer. She just knew that if bullets started flying, people would die. Good people, people who had already lost too much. Sergeant Cole, she called out. You taught me, 4 years ago, combat medic school. You said a medic's first duty is to preserve life, all life, even enemy life. Do you still believe that? Cole met her gaze across the distance. I believed it before my daughter died in the sand, begging for help that never came. She would not want this. Lisa would not want you to become a murderer. How do you know what she would want? Because she told me, right before she died. She said, tell my dad I love him, tell him I was brave. She did not say tell him to avenge me. She said tell him I was brave. Because she wanted you to remember her courage, not drown in your anger. Silence. Cole's hands trembled on his rifle. You want justice, Sloane continued. Then let the court-martial happen. Let the truth come out. I will testify. I will tell the world exactly what Drexler did. I will make sure everyone knows he abandoned us. That is real justice, not execution, truth. Jack Morrow spoke, his voice carrying pain that had calcified into rage. Words will not bring back our children. No, Sloane agreed. Nothing will bring them back, but killing Drexler will not help either. It will just add more bodies to the pile, more families destroyed, more ghosts. She could see the struggle in their faces. 8 men balanced on the knife edge between grief and violence, searching for some way to make the pain stop. Then Cole lowered his rifle. Stand down, Jack. Martin, we came here for a reason. I know, but she is right. Lisa would not want this. She would want us to be better than Drexler, to choose honor over revenge. Honor does not bring closure. Neither does murder. Jack Morrow stood frozen, rifle still raised, finger on the trigger. The other 6 men watched him, waiting for his decision. Finally, slowly, he lowered his weapon. This is not over. I know, Cole replied. The 8 men turned and walked back into the desert. Within minutes, they were gone, vanished into the heat shimmer like ghosts. Tarver's voice cut across the radio. Stand down, secure the perimeter, medical, check all personnel for injuries. Sloane stood in the empty space between the convoy and the departed attackers, adrenaline draining from her body, leaving her hollow and exhausted. Owen appeared beside her. That was the bravest thing I have ever seen. It was the only thing. No, you could have stayed behind cover. You stepped into the line of fire and talked down 8 armed men. That is not training. That is something else. Before Sloane could respond, Voss called out, Beckett, get over here, now. She walked to the ambulance. Voss was standing at the rear door, his expression grim. What is wrong? Sloane asked. Drexler collapsed. He is unconscious. Rapid pulse, low blood pressure, skin cold and clammy. I need you to examine him. Sloane climbed into the ambulance. Drexler lay on the floor, MPs having released his restraints when he lost consciousness. His orange jumpsuit was dark with sweat, his breathing shallow. She checked his pulse, thready, checked his blood pressure, dropping, checked his abdomen. And found blood. He has been shot, Sloane said quietly. What? She pulled up his jumpsuit shirt. A small caliber entry wound just below his ribs, right side. Recent but not fresh. At least 30 minutes old. Maybe more. Hidden by the orange fabric and layers of tactical vest he had been wearing during transfer. During the first ambush, a stray round must have hit him. The MPs did not notice because he did not report it. Sloane palpated the area, feeling for internal damage. The bullet is still inside, probably lodged near the renal artery. He has been bleeding internally this entire time. Why did he not say anything? Maybe he wanted to die. Maybe he thought dying was easier than court-martial. Maybe he just did not care anymore. Sloane met Voss's gaze. He needs surgery, immediate laparotomy to find and remove the bullet and repair the damaged vessels. If we do not operate in the next hour, he will bleed out. We are 3 hours from the detention facility. They have a full surgical suite there. He does not have 3 hours, maybe 30 minutes, maybe less. Voss stared at her, understanding dawned slowly. You are saying you have to operate here, now, in the back of an ambulance. Yes. Can you do that? I have the training, I have the equipment, but Voss. Sloane's voice dropped to barely a whisper. This is Drexler. This is the man who killed my friends. If I operate and make even a small mistake, he dies. And no one could ever prove it was not just bad luck. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Voss spoke carefully. Are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying I have a choice. Save the man who destroyed my life, or let him die and call it complications from his wounds. Either way, I am the only one who will know the truth. That is not a choice, Beckett. That is premeditated murder. Is it? He was wounded during combat operations. Sometimes patients die despite best efforts. Battlefield surgery has a high failure rate. Who could question that? You would, for the rest of your life. Sloane looked down at Drexler's unconscious face. The man who had abandoned 23 soldiers. The man whose voice still echoed in her nightmares. The man who had told her father that 17 was acceptable collateral damage, sending Thomas Beckett to an early grave with a broken heart. She could let him die, right here, right now. Justice served without a trial, the families would have their closure, the ghosts might finally stop screaming. All she had to do was wait. Just wait. 30 minutes and it would be over. Sloane reached for her surgical kit, then stopped. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, not from memory but from something more recent, something Voss had mentioned earlier. She turned to Voss. You said something about a letter from my father. When was I supposed to receive it? Voss hesitated. Now, this moment. I was supposed to give it to you when you faced the hardest decision of your life. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a sealed envelope. Thomas Beckett gave this to command 3 days before his death. He said if you ever faced Drexler again, you would need to read it. Sloane took the envelope with shaking hands, tore it open, unfolded the single page inside. Her father's handwriting, familiar and achingly painful. Sloane, if you are reading this, I am gone. The doctors say my heart is failing, but we both know that is only part of the truth. My heart is broken. It broke when I learned what happened at Outpost 17, not because you survived, because 23 children did not, and because I know you carry that weight every day. You asked me once if Colonel Drexler deserves to live. You asked if a man who abandoned soldiers to die should be allowed to continue breathing. You asked if justice sometimes requires us to step outside the law. I cannot answer those questions for you, but I can tell you what 30 years as a paramedic taught me. A medic's duty is sacred. We save everyone. The good, the bad, the innocent, the guilty. We do not judge, we do not punish. We simply preserve life wherever we find it. Why? Because the moment we decide who deserves saving and who does not, we stop being healers and become executioners. We become the very thing we fight against. I know Drexler hurt you. I know he hurt 23 families. I know he deserves consequences, but consequences are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be better than him, to choose mercy when he chose abandonment, to save lives when he threw them away. If you let him die when you could have saved him, you become what he is, a person who decides some lives matter less than others, a person who values personal feelings over sacred duty. I raised you to be better than that. Whatever you decide, know that I am proud of you. Know that I love you. Know that 23 soldiers would want you to be the person they believed you were. Brave, compassionate, honorable. Do not let his choice define yours. With all my love, Dad. Sloane read the letter twice. then folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket. She looked at Drexler, still unconscious, still dying. She looked at Voss. Prep him for surgery. I need irrigation, suction, and someone to hold retractors. Get Quan in here, and tell Tarver we are not moving for at least 90 minutes. You are saving him. I am doing my job. Even though you hate him. Especially because I hate him, because my father was right. The moment I decide who deserves saving, I stop being a medic and become something worse. Voss smiled just slightly. You passed the evaluation. Good, now help me save the man who killed my family. But even as she scrubbed her hands and laid out instruments, even as she prepared to cut into Raymond Drexler and repair the damage keeping him from court-martial, a small part of Sloane wondered if her father had been wrong. If maybe some people did not deserve saving. If maybe mercy was just another word for cowardice. The questions would haunt her. But she would operate anyway. Because that was who Corporal Sloane Beckett was. A medic who saved everyone. Even monsters. The surgical field was smaller than a dinner plate. Corporal Sloane Beckett worked by the harsh white light of LED lamps rigged to the ambulance ceiling, her hands moving with mechanical precision through layers of tissue and muscle. Blood welled up around her gloved fingers. She irrigated, suctioned, probed deeper. The bullet was there somewhere, lodged near the renal artery according to her examination. Small caliber, probably a ricochet from the ambush, traveling at reduced velocity but with enough force to penetrate the abdominal wall and bury itself in retroperitoneal tissue. Not immediately fatal, but left untreated, it would erode through the arterial wall within hours. Drexler would bleed out internally. Quick, relatively painless. An easy death for a man who had given 23 soldiers hard ones. Sloane's hands did not shake, did not hesitate. The training was too deep. Muscle memory forged through hundreds of hours in operating theaters and field hospitals, drilling procedures until they became instinct. Incision, exploration, control bleeding, find the source, repair the damage, close. Simple steps, mechanical process, no different than any other patient. Except this patient was Colonel Raymond Drexler. Sergeant Piper Quan stood across from Sloane, holding retractors and suction, her young face tight with concentration. She had never assisted in a laparotomy before, had barely seen major surgery outside of training videos. But she followed Sloane's instructions without question, trusting the steady calm in her superior's voice. Master Sergeant Dale Voss monitored Drexler's vitals from the head of the makeshift table, blood pressure dropping, pulse thready, oxygen saturation falling. They were losing him. BP is 70/40, Voss announced. He is crashing. I see it. Sloane's hands moved faster. She identified the renal artery, saw the dark hematoma surrounding it, the tissue damage radiating outward from the bullet track. Quan, more suction. I need to visualize the injury. Blood filled the wound faster than Quan could clear it. Too much blood. Arterial pressure building behind a weakening vessel wall. The bullet had grazed the artery but not severed it. Instead, it had created a slow leak. A time bomb waiting to rupture completely. If Sloane had waited even 10 more minutes, Drexler would have bled out. No surgery could save him. The decision would have been made for her. But she had not waited. She had chosen to operate, to save the man who had abandoned 23 soldiers to die. Why? The question circled in her mind as her hands worked. Not why had she made the choice. She knew that answer, her father's letter, his belief that medics saved everyone, the sacred duty to preserve life regardless of who deserved it. The real question was whether that belief was right, Whether mercy toward monsters was virtue or weakness, whether her father had been wise or simply naive. "I found it," Sloane said quietly. The bullet glinted in the surgical light, copper-jacketed, deformed from impact, embedded in fascia just millimeters from the arterial wall. She used forceps to grip it carefully. One wrong move and she could tear the artery completely. "Hold steady, Quan. Do not move." She extracted the bullet slowly. It came free with a wet sucking sound. Blood immediately welled up from the track, but not catastrophically. The artery was intact, damaged but intact. "Vascular clamps," Sloane ordered. Quan passed them. Sloane placed clamps above and below the injury, isolating the damaged section. Then she began to repair the arterial wall with sutures finer than human hair, each stitch precise and deliberate. 10 minutes, 20, 30. The world narrowed to the tip of her needle and the rhythm of her breathing. Outside the ambulance, soldiers stood guard. The convoy waited. The desert sun climbed toward afternoon, baking the metal shell until the interior felt like an oven despite the air conditioning running at maximum. Sweat ran down Sloane's face. She ignored it, focused on the next stitch, the next knot, the next breath. Finally, she released the vascular clamps. Blood flowed through the repaired artery. The suture line held. No leaks, no bleeding. "BP is rising," Voss reported. 80 over 50, 90 over 60. He is stabilizing. Sloane closed the fascia, closed the muscle layers, closed the skin, applied dressings. The entire procedure had taken 90 minutes. Drexler would live. The court-martial would proceed. Justice, such as it was, would be served. She stepped back from the table, pulling off her blood-soaked gloves. Her hands were steady, her breathing even. She had done her job, saved a life, fulfilled her oath. But inside she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pride, just emptiness where certainty used to be. Voss met her eyes. "Well done, Corporal. That was extraordinary work under impossible conditions." "It was just surgery." "No, it was a choice. You chose to save him when you could have let him die. That is what makes it extraordinary." Sloane looked down at Drexler's unconscious face. Peaceful now, stable, alive because she had decided he deserved to live despite everything he had taken from her. Her father would have been proud. She was not sure she was. "Get him loaded for transport," Sloane told Quan. "Monitor his vitals every 5 minutes. If his pressure drops below 80 systolic, notify me immediately." "Yes, Sergeant." Sloane froze. "What did you call me?" Quan smiled slightly. "Sergeant, Voss just submitted the field promotion paperwork. Said your actions today exceeded any evaluation criteria. Said you earned the rank 10 times over." Sloane looked at Voss. He nodded once. "You passed, not just passed. You exceeded every metric: courage under fire, medical expertise in extreme conditions, moral fortitude when facing impossible choices. You are everything a combat medic should be." "I saved the man who killed my friends." "Exactly, and that is why you earned the promotion." Voss stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Anyone can save soldiers who deserve it. It takes someone exceptional to save the ones who do not, to put duty above personal pain, to choose mercy over revenge. That is the mark of a true medic." Sloane did not know how to respond, could not process the promotion, could not reconcile the praise with the emptiness inside her. She climbed out of the ambulance and walked into the desert heat. Owen Reese found her 20 meters from the convoy, standing alone in the scrubland, staring at nothing. He approached slowly, giving her space, waiting for permission to intrude. "You okay?" he asked finally. "I do not know what I am." "You are someone who just saved a life. That is what you are." I saved the wrong life. Owen shook his head. There is no wrong life, only life. You preserved it, that is enough. Is it? It has to be. Because if we start deciding who deserves saving and who does not, we become the enemy. We become the ones who abandon soldiers to die. Sloane turned to look at him. Owen Reese, 26 years old, truck driver, quiet competence and steady calm. He had fought beside her in the ambush, had helped evacuate casualties, had stood with her when she faced down Jack Morrow's team. And now he stood with her in the aftermath, offering no solutions, just presence. Thank you, Sloane said, for everything you did today. I did not do anything special. You were there when I needed you. That is special enough. Owen smiled, just slightly. When this is over, when we get back to base, can I buy you coffee? Just coffee. No expectations. Just two people who survived something talking about anything except what we survived. Sloane felt something warm stir beneath the numbness. Not attraction exactly. Not yet, but potential. The first glimmer of connection after 9 months of isolation. Maybe, she said. Ask me when we are not surrounded by people who want to kill each other. Deal. Major Tarver's voice cut across the radio. All units mount up. We move in 5 minutes. Destination detention facility, ETA 2 hours. The convoy prepared for departure. Soldiers returned to their vehicles. Engines started. The familiar rumble of diesel and the creak of suspension filled the air. Sloane climbed back into the ambulance. Drexler lay on the gurney, still unconscious but breathing steadily. His vitals were stable. The surgery had been successful. He would live to face trial. Voss took the driver's seat. Quan positioned herself beside Drexler to monitor him. The convoy rolled out, leaving the surgical site behind, pushing toward the final stretch. 2 hours, 120 minutes, 7,200 seconds until Sloane could hand Drexler over to the detention facility and never see him again. She counted everyone. At 1400 hours, they reached the facility. A fortified compound in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by walls and guard towers and razor wire. The convoy pulled through the gates and stopped in a secure receiving area. Military police emerged to take custody of the prisoner. Medical staff wheeled Drexler into the facility for post-operative monitoring. The MPs took statements from Tarver, from Voss, from Sloane. She told them everything. The ambush, the surgery, the choice. They recorded it all with professional detachment. Just another day, just another prisoner, just another convoy that had survived when it should not have. By 1600 hours it was over. The convoy was cleared for return to base. Drexler was in custody. The mission was complete. Sloane sat in the debriefing room, exhausted beyond words, waiting for final clearance to leave. Voss joined her, carrying 2 bottles of water and a clipboard thick with forms. Congratulations, Sergeant Beckett. Your promotion is official, effective immediately. He handed her the paperwork. You are also being assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment Medical Unit. Special Operations Support. They requested you specifically. Based on what? I have been driving convoys for 9 months. Based on today, word travels fast. What you did, running through fire twice, performing battlefield surgery, talking down armed attackers. Rangers want that kind of medic on their team. What if I do not want it? Do you not? Sloane looked at the promotion orders, at the transfer papers, at the future being offered to her, a chance to use her skills, to serve at the highest level, to prove she was more than the ghost of Outpost 17. I do not know what I want anymore. Then take some leave, think about it. You have earned time to figure out who you are now. Voss stood to leave, then paused. For what it is worth, I think you are exactly who your father hoped you would be. Someone who saves lives, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. He left her alone with the paperwork and the silence. 3 weeks later, Sloane stood outside a military courtroom in full dress uniform, waiting to testify. The trial of Colonel Raymond Drexler had begun. Charges: dereliction of duty, abandonment of soldiers under fire, conduct unbecoming an officer. The prosecution had built its case on operational reports, radio transcripts, and survivor testimony. Sloane was the survivor testimony. She walked into the courtroom at 0900 hours. The gallery was packed. Families of the 17 casualties filled half the seats. Jack Morrow sat in the front row beside Martin Cole. Both men watched her with expressions she could not read. Gratitude maybe, or resentment that she had saved Drexler instead of letting him die. Drexler sat at the defense table in uniform, his rank insignia removed, his posture rigid. He did not look at her when she entered. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured major named Williams, guided Sloane through her testimony. Describe Outpost 17. Describe the attack. Describe the abandonment. Describe the massacre. Describe playing dead under corpses for 14 hours. She told it all, clinical, precise, no emotion, just facts. The defense attorney, a civilian lawyer named Patterson, cross-examined her with surgical precision, trying to establish that Drexler had been following orders, that the abandonment was not his decision, that operational necessity justified the sacrifice. Sloane answered every question with the same flat certainty. Colonel Drexler told us reinforcements were coming. They did not come. He told us to hold position. We held until we were overrun and executed. 23 soldiers died because he abandoned them. But he was following orders from division command, correct? I do not know what orders he received. I only know what he told us, and what he did not do. Is it fair to hold him responsible for decisions made above his rank? Sloane looked directly at Drexler for the first time. He was the regional commander. He had authority to request emergency extraction. He had authority to disobey illegal orders. He chose not to exercise that authority. 23 soldiers paid the price for his choice. The courtroom was silent. Patterson tried again. Corporal Beckett, you saved Colonel Drexler's life 3 weeks ago, performed emergency surgery when you could have let him die. Why did you do that if you believe he is guilty of these charges? Because I am a medic, I save lives. That is my duty, regardless of guilt or innocence. Even when the patient is the man who destroyed your life. Especially then, because if I choose who lives and dies based on personal feelings, I am no better than the people who abandoned my friends. Patterson had no follow-up questions. The trial continued for 3 days. Witnesses testified, evidence was presented, but the core of the prosecution's case remained Sloane's testimony, the sole survivor, the voice of the dead. On the 4th day, the military judge delivered the verdict: guilty on all counts, 15 years in military prison, dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all rank and benefits. But there was more. The prosecutor stood and addressed the court. Your Honor, during the investigation, we uncovered evidence that Colonel Drexler was following a classified operational directive from Division Command, a directive that designated Outpost 17 as expendable in support of Operation Steel Rain. We have since determined that this directive violated multiple regulations regarding force protection and rules of engagement. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Based on this evidence, we are bringing charges against 3 division-level officers for issuing illegal orders, conspiracy to commit dereliction of duty, and cover-up of said illegal orders. These officers will face court-martial beginning next month." The murmur became an uproar. Jack Morrow stood up, tears streaming down his face. Martin Cole sat frozen, comprehension dawning slowly. The families erupted, shouting, crying, some with rage, some with relief. Drexler was guilty, but he was not alone. The conspiracy went higher. The rot reached deeper, and finally, after 2 years, the truth was coming to light. Sloane walked out of the courtroom into bright sunlight. She felt hollowed out, empty. The testimony had drained something from her she did not know she could lose. But beneath the emptiness, something else stirred. Not closure exactly. Closure seemed impossible, but perhaps something like peace. The knowledge that she had done everything she could, saved lives, told truth, finished what her father had started. She drove to the cemetery that afternoon. Thomas Beckett's grave sat under an oak tree in a corner of the military section. Simple headstone. Name, dates, service. No elaborate epitaph, just the facts of a life lived in service to others. Sloane knelt beside the grave and placed her newly awarded silver star on the grass. The medal felt heavy, too heavy. She did not want it, did not feel she had earned it, but regulations required her to accept it, so she had. And now she left it here with the man who had taught her what it meant to serve. "I testified today," she said quietly. "Told them everything about 17. Drexler got 15 years. 3 division officers are being charged. The truth is coming out, finally." The wind moved through the oak leaves. Nothing answered. "I saved his life. Drexler, 3 weeks ago, performed surgery when I could have let him die. I do not know if you would be proud of that or disappointed. I do not know if I did the right thing. But I did what you taught me. Save everyone, even the ones who do not deserve it." She touched the headstone, cool granite beneath her fingers. "I miss you, every day. I wish you were here to tell me I made the right choice. To tell me the ghosts will stop screaming eventually. To tell me I can carry this weight without breaking." A shadow fell across the grave. Sloane turned. An older woman stood nearby, late 50s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself with military bearing. She held a folder thick with documents. "Sergeant Beckett?" the woman asked. "Yes." "My name is Margaret Sinclair. I was your father's cardiologist. May I speak with you?" Sloane stood. "About what?" "About what really killed Thomas Beckett." Ice spread through Sloane's chest. "He had a heart attack, acute myocardial infarction. That is what the death certificate said. That is what killed him physically, but I need you to understand what caused it." Dr. Sinclair opened the folder, showing medical records and correspondence. "Your father came to me 6 months before he died. His heart was failing, stress cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. Literally, the emotional trauma was destroying his cardiac tissue." "What trauma?" "He learned something about Outpost 17, something classified that he was not supposed to know." Dr. Sinclair pulled out a letter, handwritten, Thomas Beckett's writing. "He wrote this 2 days before his death. Asked me to give it to you only after Drexler's trial concluded. He wanted you to know the truth, the whole truth." Sloane took the letter with shaking hands. "Sloane, if you are reading this, the trial is over. Drexler has been convicted or acquitted. Either way, you know more now than you did when I died. I need to tell you what I learned. What killed me, not the heart attack, what caused it. 3 months after 17, I was contacted by a whistleblower from Division Command. Someone with access to classified operational orders. He told me that Outpost 17 was not a strategic position. It was bait. Division Command had intelligence that a major insurgent force was planning an offensive. They needed to draw that force into the open where air power could destroy it. So they placed 17 in an exposed position, made it look vulnerable, waited for the attack. And when the attack came, they abandoned the outpost deliberately. Let the insurgents overrun it. Let 23 soldiers die. Because that sacrifice drew the insurgent force into the kill zone where Operation Steel Rain was waiting. 23 lives traded for 200 enemy casualties. The math made sense to them. I tried to expose this, contacted senators, reporters, military investigators, but the operation was classified. The whistleblower disappeared. My inquiries were shut down. I was threatened with prosecution for handling classified information. The stress destroyed me, knowing those children died as bait, knowing the military would cover it up, knowing I could not stop it. My heart gave out under the weight of that knowledge. But I want you to know this. I died trying to get justice for your team, and now with Drexler's trial that justice is finally possible. The truth will come out. The division officers will be exposed. The families will have answers. You finished what I started. You brought the truth to light. You saved not just Drexler's life, but the integrity of the entire system by ensuring he faced trial instead of execution. I am so proud of you. Love, Dad. Sloane read the letter 3 times, then sat down hard on the grass beside the grave. Her father had known, had died knowing. The weight of 17 had killed him as surely as it had killed the 23 soldiers in the sand. But he had not died helpless. He had fought, tried to expose the truth, and when he failed, he had trusted her to finish the mission. Which she had by saving Drexler, by testifying, by ensuring the trial revealed everything. Dr. Sinclair sat beside her. He loved you very much, talked about you constantly during his appointments, said you were the strongest person he knew, said you would survive anything because you had too much integrity to quit. I did not feel strong, I felt broken. Strength is not the absence of breaking, it is continuing after you break. That is what he believed, that is what he saw in you. They sat together in silence for a long time. The sun moved across the sky, shadows lengthened, the cemetery grew quiet. Finally Sloane stood. Thank you for telling me, for giving me his letter. It is what he wanted. He wanted you to know you were not alone in carrying this weight, that he carried it too, that you both fought the same fight. Dr. Sinclair left. Sloane remained at the grave until sunset. When she finally walked back to her car, she felt different, not lighter exactly. The weight was still there. 23 ghosts still screamed in her memory, but now they were joined by her father's voice, not screaming, just speaking, telling her she had done enough, that she could rest, that she had earned peace. 4 weeks later, Sergeant Sloane Beckett reported to the 75th Ranger Regiment Medical Unit at Fort Benning. Her new assignment, her new life, a chance to use her skills at the highest level of special operations medicine. The unit commander, a lieutenant colonel named Harris, welcomed her personally. We have been following your record, Sergeant. What you did during the Drexler convoy was extraordinary. We need medics with that kind of courage and skill. Thank you, sir. I understand you have been through significant trauma. Outpost 17, the trial, losing your father. If you need time before deploying, we can arrange it. I appreciate that, sir, but I am ready to work. Good, report to the training officer tomorrow. He will integrate you into the team. Harris paused. One more thing. We received a request from Sergeant First Class Martin Cole. He is retiring from active duty but wants to work as a civilian instructor here. He specifically requested to work with you. Train the next generation of combat medics. Said you two have unfinished business. Sloane thought about Martin Cole, Lisa's father, the man who had almost attacked the convoy, who had lowered his rifle when she asked him to choose honor over revenge. "I would be honored to work with him, sir." Over the following months, Sloane found her rhythm, training, deploying, saving lives, building a reputation as one of the best combat medics in special operations. She worked alongside Martin Cole, teaching young medics the skills and ethics they would need in the field. Cole never spoke about Lisa except once. Late one evening after a long training day, he found Sloane in the medical bay, restocking supplies. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For stopping me. That day in the desert, I was about to throw away everything Lisa stood for, everything I taught her. You reminded me who I was supposed to be. You would have figured it out eventually." "Maybe, maybe not. Either way, you gave me a chance to honor her memory correctly, by teaching others, by making sure no more families have to go through what we went through." He paused. "Lisa would have liked you, would have been proud to serve beside you." "I was proud to serve beside her." They worked in comfortable silence after that. Two people bound by shared loss, finding purpose in preventing future losses. 6 months after the trial, Owen Reese transferred to Fort Benning, not to Sloane's unit but close enough to see her regularly. They had stayed in contact after the convoy. Emails, phone calls, carefully casual conversations that slowly became something more. He found her one evening after a training exercise, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the base cafe. "I believe I owe you a coffee," he said. "No expectations, just 2 people talking about anything except what we survived." Sloane smiled, the first real smile in longer than she could remember. "I think I am finally ready for that." They sat on a bench overlooking the training fields, drinking coffee and talking about nothing important. Music, movies, places they wanted to visit someday, normal things, human things, the kind of conversation that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. "Can I ask you something?" Owen said eventually. "Depends on the question." "Do you still hear them, the ghosts?" Sloane was quiet for a moment, honest. "Yes, every day, Daniel Morrow, Lisa Cole, the other 21, but they are quieter now, not screaming anymore, just, they're part of me, part of who I became." "Do you think that will ever change?" "I do not know, maybe not. Maybe they are supposed to stay with me, to remind me why I do this, why I save lives, why I choose mercy over revenge." "That is a heavy burden." "It is, but I am strong enough to carry it now. Because of my father, because of what he taught me, because of everything that happened after 17. Owen took her hand, gentle, tentative, offering connection without demanding it. Sloane did not pull away. They sat together as the sun set over the training fields, 2 people who had survived the impossible, finding something like peace in each other's company. 3 months later, Sloane received an encrypted email. No sender information, no subject line, just a brief message and an attachment. "Sergeant Beckett, you testified about Outpost 17, exposed the conspiracy, brought justice, but there is more you need to know. 17 was not the only bait operation. Division Command has used this tactic 17 times over the past 5 years. 17 outposts sacrificed, over 200 soldiers killed, all classified, all covered up, all justified as operational necessity. The officers you helped convict were not the architects, they were middle management. The real conspiracy goes higher, to levels you cannot reach through normal channels. I am attaching classified documents proving this pattern. What you do with this information is your choice. But those 200 families deserve the same justice you got for 17. Someone needs to be their voice. someone with the courage to finish what your father started. A friend in division. Sloane opened the attachment. Page after page of operational orders, classified mission briefs, after-action reports, all showing the same pattern: exposed outposts, coordinated attacks, abandonment orders, soldiers sacrificed as bait while larger operations succeeded in the background. 17 outposts, 237 soldiers dead, 17 cover-ups, all sanctioned at the highest levels of command. Her father had discovered part of this, had died trying to expose it. Sloane had exposed 17, but the conspiracy was so much larger than she had imagined. She stared at the documents for a long time, thinking about duty, about justice, about whether she had the strength to fight this battle again. Then she thought about her father, about Thomas Beckett dying with a broken heart because he could not save 200 families, about his belief that some fights were worth fighting even when you knew you might lose, about 23 ghosts who would never be silent if she walked away now. Sloane forwarded the documents to Military Criminal Investigation Command, to congressional oversight committees, to investigative journalists, to anyone who might have the power and authority to pursue the truth. Then she sent one more email, to Martin Cole, to Jack Morrow, to the other families of Outpost 17. There were 16 other 17s, 200 more families. The fight is not over, but we know how to win it now. If you want justice for all of them, I will help you get it, together. The responses came within hours, dozens of them, families ready to fight, veterans ready to testify, whistleblowers ready to come forward, a coalition united by shared loss and shared purpose. The conspiracy would fight back, would use classification and national security to hide the truth, would threaten and intimidate and obstruct. But Sloane Beckett had fought through worse, had run through kill zones, had saved the man who murdered her friends, had chosen mercy when revenge would have been easier. She could do this too. Because that was who she was, a medic who saved lives, a soldier who fought for justice, a daughter who finished her father's mission, and a woman who refused to let 200 soldiers be forgotten. 1 week later, she stood in front of a new class of combat medics, young faces, eager expressions, people who wanted to save lives and serve their country, people who had no idea how hard that service would be, how heavy the weight, how loud the ghosts. "My name is Sergeant Sloane Beckett," she began. "I am here to teach you combat medicine, how to treat wounds under fire, how to save lives in impossible conditions, how to be the difference between a soldier going home and a soldier going to Arlington." She paused, looking at each face. "But before we begin, I need you to understand something. Being a combat medic is not just about medical skills. It is about moral courage, about choosing to save lives even when saving them is hard, even when the patient is someone you hate, even when letting them die would be easier. Because the moment you decide who deserves saving and who does not, you stop being a medic and become something else, something darker, something that abandons soldiers when they need you most." She thought about Drexler, about 17, about her father's letter and his broken heart and his belief in doing the right thing even when it cost everything. "Your duty is sacred. You save everyone. The good, the bad, the innocent, the guilty. You do not judge, you do not punish. You simply preserve life wherever you find it. That is the oath you will take. That is the burden you will carry. And that is the standard I will hold you to." The class was silent, absorbing, understanding that they were being offered not just training but a philosophy, a way of living, a code that would define who they became. "Any questions?" A young private raised his hand. "Sergeant, Is it true you saved Colonel Drexler, the man who abandoned Outpost 17?
Yes.
Why? Sloane thought about that question. The same question she had asked herself 1,000 times. The question that still had no easy answer. Because my father taught me that being a medic means saving everyone, especially the ones who do not deserve it, because that is what separates us from the people who abandon soldiers to die. Because mercy is harder than revenge, and the hard choice is usually the right one. She met the private's eyes. And because 23 soldiers who died at 17 would have wanted me to be better than the man who killed them, to choose honor over hate, to prove that one person's evil does not have to define who I become. The private nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Now, Sloane said, let us begin. We have a lot to cover, and somewhere out there, soldiers are counting on you to be ready when they need you. Let us make sure you do not let them down. The class began. Sloane taught, shared her knowledge, passed on what her father had taught her, what Master Sergeant Voss had shown her, what Outpost 17 had burned into her soul. And at the end of the day, when the students filed out and she was alone in the training bay, she thought about everything that had led her here. The ambush, the surgery, the trial, the conspiracy, the 200 families still waiting for justice. The fight was not over, might never be over. There would always be another outpost, another cover-up, another choice between mercy and revenge. But she was ready, because she knew who she was now, not just the ghost of 17, not just Thomas Beckett's daughter, not just a combat medic. She was Sergeant Sloane Beckett, someone who saved lives, someone who fought for justice, someone who chose honor even when hate would have been easier, someone who refused to let the ghost scream alone. And that was enough. That was everything. She turned off the lights and walked out into the Georgia evening, the weight of 237 names on her shoulders, 23 ghosts at her side, and her father's voice in her memory telling her she was strong enough to carry it all. Because that was what medics did. They saved everyone, even themselves.